The enemy doesn't want things to happen and creates resistance so that things would fall apart. You have to get over the stormy waters. You have to get over the difficulties. You have to get over the obstacles. You have to go through them in order to find those still waters. It's actually not the extra work. It's the empty mile that I want you to be a part of. It's not the extra mile I need you to do. It's the empty mile I want you to run. At the beginning of anything, when you win continuously, when you keep your commitments, that's what creates confidence. And it will continue to parlay over into your life. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothlingshofer. And if you're new here, I just want to say welcome, because today's episode is, I think, going to move you in a big, big way. I think it's going to land in a big, big way. And the only thing I ask is, at the end of this episode, if you have heard something that moved you, that caused you to think differently, that's going to impact your life in a powerful way, I would just ask that you would share it with somebody, that you would go leave a review, put it on your social media so I can respond back to you and start conversation and build relationship. But at the end of the day, I hope it's something that just really resonates with your soul and moves you into a powerful state today. If you have any interest in going back, we've got over 300 episodes, and you can join the 10,000 listeners a month that are listening to this podcast. We've just been so blessed in being able to just have people who are listening to these things, and I'm getting messages and emails, and it just really warms my heart, because we aim to really create change in people. And today, I really want to just talk about what my last week's been like, to be honest with you. If anybody's been following along the journey with social media, you know we were down in Cancun for the hurricane. You know that we were hosting our couples collective retreat down there. You know the struggles that kind of have come along with that on this particular retreat. And I'm going to take you in depth on that story and some of the revelations that have come from that. Then I'm also going to end with a little story about today's run, because if you have also been following along, you know that I'm preparing for a high rock season this year and getting back to that world championship caliber stage. And it's really just been this unique journey of learning the difference between commitment and compromise, because so much of our culture nowadays is all about, let's say we want to do something, but then actually not back it up. Let's say we want to accomplish something, but then not go through the steps. Let's say we want to have something come to fruition, but not be willing to establish the disciplines. And so this whole process has been actually really fun and unique to go through and see the shaping of myself that has actually happened. And so I want to fast forward I want to rewind back about 10 days. And if you aren't familiar with the Couples Collective is a community that my wife and I started about 2.5 years ago that brings together entrepreneurial couples in the pursuit of 5 pillars of health: healthy body, healthy mind, healthy soul, healthy family, healthy marriage. And because so often what happens is either the male or the female or one of the spouses will be in a business-oriented group. The other one just kind of maybe gets dragged along, or worst case scenario, they just get left out completely. And so there's these things that happen. There's developmental points in a marriage and in a journey, on the entrepreneurial journey, that really starts to create some massive separation. And in creating massive separation, we know that creates lack of communication. We know that creates stressors. We know that stressors impact our body. We know that those habits that ultimately our bodies start to take on because of priorities that we have, we start to get out of shape. We start to not think properly. We start to have a spirit that feels unraveled. We have a marriage that is divided. We have a family that ultimately feels the stress of that. So we know the journey that the entrepreneurial couple is on. And that doesn't mean you have to be doing business together. It could just mean that one of the spouses is an entrepreneur. And by default, the family is an entrepreneurial family. And so that's who we serve. And when we sit and we think about serving that audience member, we've just seen some massive transformation in the people's lives that have come through this. And so it's no surprise that there would be resistance. And so as Elise and I were boarding our flight to go down to Auberge Resort in Cancun, Mexico, we get a phone call that all of the clothes that we give to people, all of the different assets, the different tools, the different things that we had sent down to Mexico were not going to make it. They were stuck in customs because of the storm. And at this point, we knew that there was a storm coming in, but we didn't know the severity. So first off, we think, oh my, this is terrible. We're not going to have any clothes. We're not going to have any swag. We're not going to have any tools. We're not going to have the things that we're going to do in the workshops. What are we going to do? So on the plane, we start brainstorming. How is this going to actually start working? And then we land. And we land in Mexico to a rainstorm. It's raining. Not anything new that we would see in Miami, but everyone's talking about the hurricane. The hurricane's coming through. It's probably going to come over Tuesday night into Wednesday. And that's not a big deal because the retreat starts Wednesday night, but everybody else's flights are supposed to be landing Wednesday morning. And so we're sitting here going, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And as we start looking at this hurricane on the radar, we all know what happened when it hit America. We know what happened in Asheville, North Carolina. We know all these things. So we can imagine what was happening. And so the wind starts picking up, the rain start coming, and all of these things that we're just sitting there going, oh my gosh, what's happening? Then to top it off, we get a phone call from our VIP guest, Erwin McManus, who's going to come and be with us for 4 days, pour into our members, pour into our community. And at this point, Elise and I had said, well, you know what? Erwin's coming, so at least we'll have that, even though we don't have the swag and the other tools. We get a phone call from Erwin that the night before he was supposed to leave, he tore his hamstring, fell, dislocated his elbow, and was in the hospital and wasn't going to be able to make it. So we're sitting here going, this is going to be the worst retreat ever. This is going to be awful. And immediately we canceled that way of thinking. We said, of course this is happening. Of course this is occurring. Of course this is where we're at because of what we're seeing the change in. Of course there's going to be obstacles. And when I say this to you, I really want you to understand the depth of this. Like, this isn't something that is minor. This is a huge deal. This is a twice a year retreat with this community that we pour a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money into. And we have these people that come, and it's transformative. And it helps establish such this family mentality that we've created in this community. And so and we plan these out like a year and a half, 2 years in advance. So this is like a big deal. And all of a sudden there was this peace that came over us. And lo and behold, we started to see how the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. We started to see to steal, to kill, and overcome. Where all of a sudden, Wednesday night, the storm started to part. The storm started to make its way off. Really at the resort, we never even got much of anything other than a little bit of wind and rain. And every single person's flight landed, slight delays, maybe an hour or two, but every single person's flight landed to get them to the welcome dinner Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Then all of a sudden, some of the things that we had gathered up and packed in our suitcases, Elise had brought enough of the resources that we didn't need what was in and held behind in customs. And then we worked with Erwin to make sure that he could get on virtually and be able to do a workshop with us for 3 hours each day. And the TV that they just happened to have was 85 inches wide. So it felt like he was in the room. Everyone was locked in. Erwin's ability to communicate with everybody from screen was impeccable, world class. And there was a massive movement, a massive connection with people and breakthrough. And on the last day, we all went snorkeling, and I ended up getting on a paddleboard and I paddled out, and there's this coral reef, and the coral reef constantly throws water at you. And as the coral reef was sending water at me, I was really struggling to get over it. And then all of a sudden, as I paddled, it took about 15 minutes of getting 5 steps closer and 3 steps further and 5 steps closer and 3 steps further, and slowly making my way over top of that reef, the water stilled and the water calmed. And it just brought me back to this concept. And I don't know who this is for today, who is listening to this, but what it brought me back to was that there are going to be stormy waters, and there's going to be difficulty that you have to overcome, but you have to get over the stormy waters. You have to get over the difficulties. You have to get over the obstacles. You have to go through them in order to find those still waters. And that was just this big moment for me. And the uniqueness of this was what it did for Elise and Mai's faith, for the true knowing and understanding that everything has its place, everything has its timing, everything has its reasons. And the faith that this built in us, knowing that everything was going to be okay. We had this uncanny peace on Wednesday that everything was going to be fine, that everything was going to be great, but we didn't even know how great it was going to be. Because not only was this the best retreat that we've had in terms of connection and breakthrough and fellowship, but when everybody went home on Monday, all of a sudden we start to get the remnants of what went on, because one of our members lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And as he's sending us messages and updates that they need food, they need water, they need gas, they need all these things just to keep life going, I finished a podcast and I picked up my phone and there was 77 messages in our group text. And this is the power of the community that Own It has and that the Couples Collective has built. They needed food, they needed water, they needed gas specifically. That was the ask. Within 45 minutes, there was a GoFundMe page made. There was a couple of phone calls being made. We had a private plane that had everything set up with food and water being sent in. We had somebody who had contacted that got 2 gas trucks to be drove over. Somebody knew somebody in a gassing industry, and they had raised just over $80,000 to fill those gas tanks repeatedly so that they could get gas. The enemy doesn't want things to happen and creates resistance so that things would fall apart. If nobody had gotten to the retreat, nobody would have gotten that close. Nobody would have been able to build the relationships, the depth in which had happened, and rekindling things and creating that breakthrough, creating that family orientedness that would have created what happened this following week. That is the power of getting out of your comfort zone. That is the power of overcoming. That is the power of being committed to something. Every single one of those couples could have said, you know what, I'm going to stay home. It's easier. You know what, I'm going to stay home. There's too much uncertainty. You know what, I'm going to stay home. I feel uncomfortable. But no, every one of them committed. Every one of them said, we're in. Every one of them said, we're coming. Every one of them said, I can't wait. And they overcame to get the breakthrough that was on the other side. And that's the power. That's the power. And so whatever you feel resistance in, whatever you feel like is holding you back, whatever you feel like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that decision, that difficult decision, keep going through, power through, because the greatness is on the other side. Now, I want to end with the story of what happened this morning, because as you know, training for High Rocks and all these, the message and the theme here, there's a common thread. So just hang on with me. I've been training for High Rocks and the training's grueling. Like there's a lot of days that I just don't want to go work that hard, to be honest with you. Have your heart rate sky high and be pushing on these 1 kilometer repeats and being able to do 1,000-meter rows into squats and like all the things that are going on, like just really not all for it some days. And this morning was a track day. And as I woke up, I was like, I don't want to get up. But I knew I had 4 other men waiting at the track for me. And I'd committed to them to be there. So obviously, I got out of bed. The commitment highly overtakes my desire not to go. This is why we make commitments. This is why we have standards. And it's always commitments and standards over feelings and emotions and opinions every single day of the week. And so I roll up to the track. The track is full of about 200 people. And the reason it's full of 200 people is there's a running club there. And everybody's out, everybody's getting their runs in, everybody's doing the thing. And it's a little bit more humid than normal. It's thick. Actually, one of the guys that we were running with on Friday, he's from upstate New York. And he goes, man, it is really humid here. And it was even a little bit more humid for an October 4th in Miami. And as we start running, our workout was an 800-meter sprint, a 1-minute rest, a 400-meter sprint, right into 50 wall balls. We do that 6 times. And as we were going through this, on set 3, it started to rain. Started to drizzle. And then all of a sudden, the skies unleashed. And when I say unleashed, like within a span of about 15 minutes, there was 2 inches of water on the track. The turf was saturated. It was thick. And as we were going through this is only 30 minutes after we started training. The 200 people became 5 to 10 people, and you saw this mass exodus. And as I was running, I got this revelation of the empty mile, because the 4 of us, we just stayed on pace. We had our sprinting pace. We had our rest intervals. We had our sprinting pace. We had our rest intervals. We just got work done. And it hit me all of a sudden that everyone talks about doing the extra mile, getting uncomfortable, doing the extra work. It's actually not the extra work. It's the empty mile that I want you to be a part of. It's not the extra mile I need you to do. It's the empty mile I want you to run. At the beginning of anything, it's crowded. At the beginning of anything, there's a lot of people starting. At the beginning of anything, there's a lot of people who want to do it. At the beginning of anything, there's a lot of confusion and just people. But there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be hardships. There's going to be things you have to overcome, and not everybody is committed. And if you have the championship mindset, if you are willing to just stay around, if you are willing to just commit, you will have the privilege to see the empty mile. And the empty mile is rewarding. The empty mile is fun. The empty mile takes you from I have to do something to I get to do something. You can take those 3 examples that I gave you, the 3 revelations that I gave you, from the couples collective, from making it so we had to get to Cancun. And when we got there, the hard parts were over and it was easier waters. It was the empty mile that we got to experience. It was an empty mile experience. When I was on the water, when I was paddling, it was hard to get through, but I got through, and there was 4 or 5 people that didn't make it. But all of a sudden I got through and I got to go and snorkel and see all these really cool things out there. It was the empty mile experience. Same thing at the track. I literally got to run the empty mile experience because 30 minutes after the rain stopped, people started to come back. And I heard one person say, man, I wish I could have finished my workout, but that rain. And in the back of my head, I just said, we win. We finished. We were committed. We did it. And that's something that you can't take away. That's something that you can't steal. That's confidence that you can't shake. That's a win that you can't turn into a loss. And when you win continuously, when you keep your commitments, that's what creates confidence. And it will continue to parlay over into your life. And so I don't know where you're at today. I don't know who's listening to this today. I don't know who needs a little bit of motivation, inspiration, and just revelation as to what do you need to do? What do you need to commit to? What do you need to do differently so that you can experience that empty mile moment? Because the empty mile is not for everyone. The empty mile is built for everyone, but the privilege to experience is not. You have to be willing to be committed, and you have to be willing to be different. And when you have that mentality to be able to do things differently, to live differently, commit to things differently, that's when you get the privilege to experience the empty mile. And my goodness, how fun is that? Life can look a lot different, but it only looks different if you make different decisions. So I don't know where you're at today. You could be toiling and being like, man, I've tried to get fit for the last 15 years. Never really happened. It's time to commit to something. Maybe you've been successful in business, but the relationship that you have with your family is just really not optimal. The relationship you have with your mindset and your health is not optimal. It's time to commit to something. Maybe you have to reach out for the couples collective. Maybe you have to reach out to a community. Maybe you have to reach out to actually get some more information on something. Because I'll tell you what, every single couple that's in that is realizing life at a different level. They've realized true wealth, which is identifying success financially with success in health, with success in mindset, with success in family, with success in marriage, with success in faith. That's what it looks like. You can win in everything, but it requires you to commit differently than how you are today. We know success is different, so I want you guys to own your different, and we'll see you guys next week.